Hey folks, this is Rabble Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Tornado Tony Pennycount.
And Psychic Tom Paget.
And we're moving the needle this week.
Not too many predictions this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna cover that later, Tom. We're a little bit mad at you about this whole thing. You didn't predict it. But we're moving the needle to full panic.
I'm so busy in the fight world. You know what I mean? That's all my psychic energy. I got to get back into the real world.
Actually, I think we have tape of when you did predict it. No, I'm just kidding. That would be some shit. We'll just rewind it to 3 months ago when Tom warned us all this was coming. I can point right to it.
It's in the air. It's small. Lungs. Yeah, breathing. Something. I don't know if it's a virus. Kind of. I'm getting that vision.
I think it was back when everybody was talking about boxing was dying, and you said no, it just has the flu. No.
Yeah, it just has a virus.
Just has a virus. Yeah. That's what it was. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about with this thing. It's canceling everything, basically. The UFC has tried to stand above the rest and continue. I believe they had last weekend's UFC Fight Night 170 in front of no crowd. Just streamed.
Yeah, my dad said, I guess it was on ESPN Plus or something.
Yeah.
He said he was watching he said he was watching a show, and he said, even without a crowd, I mean, he still was like, hey, it was something better than nothing, and he said, it wasn't bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of people that had nothing else combat sports related to watch might benefit from that, and the UFC could benefit from it too, but we're going to get into a little bit later after we exhaust all the other news about COVID-19, about how there's certain industries that are going to get hammered in a bad way no matter what bailouts get sent their way.
Yeah.
And sports could be one of them, and the UFC especially, because it's so over-leveraged with its, just buying it for $4.2 million with all these, investment funds and everything, and people expecting dividends, and now they're probably looking at, possibly facing a loss for next year unless their subscription service takes off because nobody has anything better to do but watch old fights.
Right. Yeah,
it's going to be challenging.
Along those lines, what you were just saying there, it's like if you go back and you look at other sports, leagues, at NFL, NHL, NBA, they all have leagues. So they have collective bargaining agreements. They have, a lot of things that would protect them. In your combat sports, you really don't have that. I mean, maybe in the UFC you might because it is an organization. Whereas in boxing, you don't because it's just literally a bunch of independent contractors, basically.
Yeah.
The organizations are bodies, but you're not hired by them. You have your WWE right now. It's like, like Vince McMahon's still trying to figure out a way to go with WrestleMania, maybe in the empty arena type thing, which I think is going to flop.
Yeah, we got a story on that too. They had a leaked tape.
Yeah,
leaked tape, and they showed when they went to commercials, since there was no audience, all the wrestlers stopped. They stopped wrestling in the middle of the match.
Yeah, they were. I missed that part, but I had heard it. But I mean,
I'm sneezing now.
Yeah, don't do that. And Tom, you weren't on yet when I was talking to Rich. We were talking about when I was down in Florida. I just got back yesterday, and things were changing literally almost minute by minute down there.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
If you saw that video that's going all over the news of like the people flooding the beach.
Yeah, when they say how not to social distance, and then they show Tony's picture.
Yeah, that was a matter of no, not me because I don't go on the beach. I went on the beach for 2 minutes to take a few photos. I get bored on the beach, to be honest. But here's what's funny, Tom. When I go down there, I have a routine, and like I'll fly in. Like this year, my routine was scheduled to be this: fly in on Saturday, get a quick workout in, putz around, go to dinner, have some drinks, wake up the next morning, do a workout. breakfast, game. Game's over, hang for a bit, stay local. The next day, would be Monday, I go to Clearwater Beach where my friends are. And we don't spend much time on the beach. We generally bar hop, pirate cruise, bar hop, and then I go back. Next day's game day. So it's basically game day again. Get up, work out, breakfast, game. Then I go home and pack. So we get down there. Well, here's what's funny. Friday night, now I have traditions that I do on social media before every vacation. And it's me being me. I always take a picture of my empty suitcase and I make a list. And I said, step 1, find suitcase. Step 2, open it. Step 3, find list, blah, 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 blah. Take picture, take break. And I do it all the time. I posted on Facebook and said, I don't even do that. I said, I really don't feel like going. I don't care. And then my dad was saying to me, he goes, no, I think you really need to get away. You've been under so much. You need to get away. And I'm like, okay. So I packed up, and Saturday morning I'm at the airport, and I get a text message. It's the owner of the one very well-known breakfast place down there. We're Facebook friends, and obviously have each other's number. And he goes, I saw your post. You're not coming? I said, I'm on my way. And I said, and I have the outfit. And I said, I will honor all my promises. I will make every appearance I can. And when I walked in there on Sunday in costume, the whole place erupted in cheers. Yeah. And after it was over, and what he did, because he has a very successful business there, and as and I'll explain to you how every day was changing. Every day that he was working the front, he pulled my check away from me. Because he knew from the past, because usually he would pick up when I'm down there, because I do so many photos for him and stuff. He knows I always tip the waitresses very well. But on the days that if he covers my meal, I pretty much double what the waitress is going to get. And that was his way of making sure that I was putting more funds towards the girls that are likely going to be suffering from this. So, we go there Sunday, meet a friend, we have breakfast. We walk down to the stadium, I do some photos, so on and so forth. Went up, honored a few other commitments that I had. And then I was like, okay, I said, I guess today I'm going to go to Clearwater Beach because I don't know if they're going to close it, and I want to go visit my friends and, go to Hulk Hogan shop and buy a shirt for Little Dominic and do all that. So I get my Uber, I put in destination Clearwater Beach. The guy comes to pick me up. He goes, I'm not taking you there. He goes, it's like a 5-mile drive. It was taking people an hour. And I'm like, he's like, I'll take you a detour down to the ferry. You can take the ferry across the inlet, which was like $4. I'm like, okay. So I did that, and then Monday I was bored, and I knew my friends weren't up yet. I was. So I walked around the block a few times, got a couple miles of walking in, and had my breakfast. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do today? Every time I go to Clearwater Beach, I always try to get a picture of the high school, the Clearwater Tornadoes, when I pass. But I'm always in the vehicle, and the photos never come out clear. Clearwater High School is about 2 miles away. I just started walking it. Like, got nothing else to do. So I went there, did selfies in front of an empty high school. Then, like I said, I went to Clearwater Beach, and you could hear rumblings of things going on, and you could just hear people talking, and you could hear the news. Like I said, as I was on that ferry on Sunday, I could see the helicopters showing videos, like they were filming, obviously, all the people flooding this beach. So we knew that something statewide was happening soon, and it was going to hit us.
Yeah. So,
like the Tuesday, I'm going to fly home Wednesday. I said, there's no way I'm even going to try to get an Uber back there. I said, and then especially if they start closing the beaches, and people are going to be in like a mad rush to get out, I'm not going to be able to get back to my room.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm just going to stay local. I went to the one place. It was St. Patrick's Day. You could not fill every table because people weren't coming in, and the girls were saying they were sending girls home, which was unheard of on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know what time this place is going to close. So I said, I better get my dinner for takeout so I have something to eat tonight because I don't know what places are open and closed. And then, like I said, even when I was flying there on Saturday, I'm in the Philadelphia airport, I'm looking at people walking around a family in full hazmat suits.
Oh,
yeah.
Jesus.
Another guy that I was sitting next to in the one bar in Clearwater, and we were talking, and he told me, he goes, my daughter was flying from, I think, New Hampshire, and I think it was somewhere where it had to be a plane that had to go, because maybe it was like a connecting flight or something, I don't know, but this girl did a Facebook Live video on the plane. She was the only passenger.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah, it's super cheap to get flights now too.
Oh yeah,
from what they're saying.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm looking at my flight, which I paid like a couple $100 for. It was like $50 each way.
Wow. The where it set in for me is when I went to Walmart for the first time.
How many big companies? And how many big companies now have been turned into penny stocks because of this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a bad one.
And everyone says, "Well, we'll get back to normal." Maybe not, because I read another article about starting to use emergency room admissions as evidence of another pandemic. This could continue, not just in this form, but things may never be quite the same. Some people will never recover from this economically. Think about it.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's a very real possibility. It's one of the times that I hope your psychic prediction is wrong. But, you look at it and you're like, but the scary thing is, like that Billy Joel song says, you may be wrong, but you may be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We may be crazy.
Glad I can work out of the house.
Yeah. Speaking of that, good
good
transition, Tom. We're gonna move into that later, but home training, isometrics, obviously you can do a lot with that. Bags,
Yeah.
you got to disinfect everything still, because you might give yourself the virus. Who knows these days? What they're talking.
Yeah. In fact, I just got a new called an Echo bike that they use in CrossFit.
Yep.
If you've ever seen that. Yeah. So I haven't got it put together yet because I've been too busy.
Well,
so
I'll
that's
tell
going to
you.
be tomorrow's project. I mean, I've got it halfway assembled.
Well, I definitely can tell you they're pushing this social distancing thing like crazy. You gotta basically.
Yeah, I guess gyms are closed. I mean, a lot of gyms.
Yeah, not only gyms, but
I know in this day you can't even get a haircut. You can't go to a bar. You can't go to a restaurant. I mean, it's probably that way just about everywhere. I know. I was talking to my buddy in California. California's in lockdown also.
Yeah, badly. New York City and pretty much all of California. New York State might follow, but it's kind of funny because everybody makes fun of the mayor down there in New York City, and I don't think the guy's in touch with reality right now. And it's not political. It's just totally just based on my personal observations from watching the news and then listening to this guy talk.
Right.
Because you watch the news and Trump's talking about sending military hospital ships to New York, and also cruise ships if need be for hospitals. And then you got the mayor of New York City going, why doesn't Trump send the military? He is, you idiot. It's like, some people are just so retarded. And they're feeding the panic,
Mm-hmm.
They're just feeding it.
Yeah.
The media is bad enough, but the biggest mystery, I think, of all of this, whether you believe in any conspiracy or not, is can we get this twice? Can we have it, spit it out, and get it again somehow? Is that possible? Because that's the biggest problem we have to face, if we can. Then it's going to be 18 months and not 2 months.
Yeah, and it could also come back in different strains similar to the flu.
Right.
Because we just don't know yet. Now, my gut feelings says that I think it will get under control, I don't think it's going to be all summer, but still. The question is it going to be stomped out once and for all? The flu isn't.
No.
And you had that 100-year thing. That's a good point. My mother was born in 1918.
Yeah, I was doing some research on it today. The 100-year curse is what he was mentioning. Now, this has been going around Facebook. I'm sure, Tony, you can vouch for this. There was all kinds of memes about this. 2020 is coming. We're going to have the next plague because it happens every 100 years. And it just turned out, it was like 1918, I think it was when the year it first started, but the Spanish flu was the last 100-year one.
Yeah.
And the Spanish flu was so bad. Actually, in Vermont, it actually started in the colleges. Norwich was one of the colleges that had it bad. I think there were 60 cadets that had it. But it originally was supposedly called the Spanish flu because it came from Spain, but that's total bullshit. It's kind of a funny one because it came from like some military camp in the United States, down south somewhere, and it was due to unsanitary conditions, just like supposedly this thing is over there in China. So the Spanish flu came out, and then the only reason it was called the Spanish flu is because at the time, the only newspapers that weren't censored because of wartime situation stuff, World War I, was the Spanish newspapers. So they started reporting it first. So they called it the Spanish flu. And then on top of this, it was so bad for your lungs that when they found the corpses that had died from it and they did the autopsies, they said these people's lungs looked like people's healthy livers would look like.
Wow.
They were that saturated with fluids. So it was literally like drowning in your own body. Which I imagine this is probably like for older people who have compromised immune systems and other issues. But I've been quizzing Alexa about this one. So Alexa has told me
this
the
is where all this, Tony, this is where all this conspiracy stuff coming. Okay, now I understand. I was worried a couple guys had grabbed him and given him an injection or...
No, if you have an Alexa or a Google...
Now I see where he's getting it.
If you have an Alexa or a Google, the funny thing is, I asked it today. I said, Alexa, what is the conspiracy behind the coronavirus? And she goes right through the history, the real history of the coronavirus. She starts with the date it was first discovered, and she just skips right over the word conspiracy. Like she ignores it, or she's really doing it. I don't know. But, it's funny. Well, there's certain things you can say to it and, get responses that, you can make a million funny YouTube videos. I'm going to do one too, because, the whole Norwich shutdown thing, and be like, hey, guys, when you're at home from Norwich, and you're missing, being able to yell at kids, you can yell at Alexa. And you take your frustrations out about the virus too, because, when she starts telling the story about, traditional story, you can just be like, Alexa, shut up. And she just totally shuts up. And then today I did it, and I go, Alexa, tell me the real story behind Corona. And she goes, I don't know that. So, yeah, but the Spanish flu was a bad one. They said, the thing about conspiracy theories is, they're just so believable if you are willing to open your mind to it. Anything is possible. And if you've seen the history of what governments will do and have done in the past, the old fact is stranger than fiction thing, it's just like, wow, you can't ever be like, wow, that could never happen. These days are too crazy. Nobody could have predicted this, obviously. Tom didn't, so. So nobody could have. But, yeah, conspiracy theories. The biggest one is one that's been brewing online for a very long time. And I have a buddy of my dad's who's in the health food business, and he's probably the one that sends me the most information about this one. It's the 5G one. And there are just multiple layers to this one. Because if you go onto your cell phone, right, and this is the most shocking thing, and you go into the settings screen, and you just keep going deeper and deeper into the help screen, and you'll find the warnings on your own cell phone of what your phone will do to you. So never use your cell phone up against your ear. I don't care if you have a Bluetooth or anything. You don't put anything that collects wireless energy next to your ear or your brain or your head at all. Use it on speakerphone away from your face. That's the advice. That's the best advice for avoiding traditional stuff from your phone. But the problem with 5G, they say, is it doesn't matter how far you keep your phone away from you, because it fundamentally affects the environment around us. And it will actually alter the oxygen molecules if it's at full strength. Not to mention different wavelengths and damages they can do to brain waves and all this other stuff. But the big theory of why this is taking off as being associated with coronavirus is because Wuhan was supposedly the big city where they put up the massive infrastructure first.
Right.
But we also see ads on television now talking about Mobile One or T-Mobile, and how they have this $50 billion network now of 5G, and it goes over a mile instead of just a couple blocks like it normally should. And that's big complaint about 5G is it's going to take so many installations to make it work that it's not going to be economically feasible. So what do they have to do? They have to charge the shit out of people to make their money back. So how can they do that? They make us depend on an online world. And they're already calling it the stay-at-home economy. Already calling it that. Jim fucking Cramer on Mad Money was using it all over the place today. The stay-at-home economy. And what did he say? I sent you the...
So in other words, Rich, the theory is these big tech companies planned all this. And
I don't know if they planned the corona thing. I don't know if they planned it.
Yeah.
Or if China is behind it all.
Yeah,
China planned it. Because
so
they're
the theory,
profiting the most.
So the theory... Okay, so China's a big player in 5G. So they planned this, and they wanted to keep it secret. They thought they could keep it secret, but some people in the know seen right through it. Is that it?
I don't necessarily know if it's even, possible to plan this whole thing as, one small group or one country even. You can't plan how they're going to respond to it. You probably can't plan for the backlash. They maybe, if you believe in this 5G conspiracy theory connected to Corona, you would have to, I think, rationally ask yourself, how are they going to do this all at the same time and make it work? Well,
yeah, exactly.
Because 5G itself...
So Kramer was talking about this.
5G itself maybe can damage people, but it can't cause this worldwide pandemic. 5G is not contagious. So, to make it work, you would have to have the flu be separate. It's a different strain of flu, which is kind of funny because the H1N1 bird flu that went around years ago is back. If there's another bird flu in China that's also simultaneously happening right now. So if you just mistook that for the coronavirus or just mislabeled it on purpose, let that go wild. But at the same time, 5G is also doing damage to people. Then it makes it look like a different disease altogether. So what you have is a global pandemic, supposedly, when it's really just a different version of the flu that we're used to. But it's also, in some cities, bad because it's damaging people from the 5G that they're installing. And the big part of the conspiracy theory that's really unfolding the last few days is they're saying that contractors are supposedly getting told that they need to go into schools and install 5G under the guise of, hey, we're working for the cleaning companies. And they supposedly signed all these non-disclosure agreements. I mean, this is deep-level conspiracy level shit, And this isn't coming from me. This is coming from YouTube videos that I watched of people that have been talking about 5G
the experts,
forever.
The uncoverers, yeah, these people that are onto this, and they see right through these guys trying to hide this stuff, and they see right through them.
But there's actually a way, whether you believe it or not, it's not like crazy to take precautions against it if it is in fact true that 5G is damaging you.
Oh, exactly.
So there is a guy that I just looked at today, Dr. Joe Mercola, I think, and he's got a book about how not to get EMF'd. So I'll send both of you guys the link, and I'll put it on the show description. But if you believe in the connection, there's there's ways you can go. There's avenues you can go down, and there's arguments that you could make for it. But you have to, bottom line, if you're at home sitting there and you're like a writer like me, they like to think about all this kind of stuff and not just believe what the media's spitting at you. You want to question everything right now. Question everything. And in the back of your mind, reason out what you should do based on not, one certain station or one media report. You have to go with the general consensus of everything you read, everything you see. And, some stuff's going to be contrary. Like everything they're putting out today about China. China has been lying to their own people for generations. Why are you going to believe the shit they're telling you about these no new tests coming back positive? Are you shitting me? How's that possible? No, that's not possible. I don't believe it for a second. So, shit like that, it's all over the news. And then they even asked Trump about it today, and he said, I wouldn't believe it. But, the media is just going to do their own separate narrative. And one of the people on, I think I said this last week, one of the people on CNN even said, listen, this could be really good for Trump. Because this is a crisis. He's up there as the leader in this crisis. And the American people are going to be used to seeing him every single day, taking charge of this situation. And as long as it doesn't completely destroy us as a nation, and he can carry us through it, he's more likely to get elected. And at the same time, he gets to prove that socialism, even on a tiny scale, is probably going to fail. But there's no other choice right now.
But it could work the other way too, though.
Yeah, it could. But it has to become a complete disaster. And if they always knew it was a flu, it could never become a complete disaster. So that, again, ties into all your conspiracies. It's a never-ending loop.
What's crazy? It's because, I'm on social media, especially, the last few days when I was, either sitting in the airport waiting to get on a plane or, sitting by the pool waiting, for my friends. And I would read, and I would, I take, people's Facebook posts with a grain of salt. They're like, and I'm talking about anything. I'm talking about political. I'm talking about combat sports. I'll read some people that write some combat sports stuff, and I'm like, these people consider themselves like they know what they're talking about. These people are idiots. To quote the late Roger Mayweather, who just passed away, and we will pay tribute to him later, they don't know shit about boxing, right? A lot of people will sit there and they will give their opinions on this, and I'm thinking, you barely graduated high school, and you can work, and you struggle to work and keep your job in like a convenience store, like a 7-Eleven. Don't tell me, that you want to give me your opinion. I don't want to hear it. But there are people that it's funny that no matter what goes wrong, they're going to blame Donald Trump, whether he's doing something
CNN,
good or bad. And then it's like they're saying the people that are for Trump are saying that the people that are against him shouldn't get the stimulus money because he's not their president. Then again, the people that are against Trump are saying that the people that are for him should not get the stimulus money because they're against socialism and this is socialism.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's not socialism. Socialism is basically the government controls, you pay taxes, and then the government basically disperses what you get, and they give things to you. The government's in control. That's the last thing you want. That is the last thing you want. You really trust the government to look out for your best needs? Get the hell out of here. You see how well that does for China,
Did they call Andrew Yang a socialist? This is his plan to give everybody $1,000 a month. It's the Andrew Yang rescue package.
And this is not $1,000 a month. This is $1,000 that'll help you while people are not working right now because, whatever. Hey, I'm fortunate enough where, and I made fun of it last week, that I can work from home. Now, here's what's crazy. My client, remember, I was off for 3 days. So when I came back to it, I was backed up. I had a lot of work to do, but not like I normally would on a 3-day vacation because I was able to get through it 3 days of work, technically 4 days of work, in 1 day and have time to spare. When normally that would never happen.
Yeah.
But here's where it's crazy. See, I'm working 3 queues right now. My queue, my personal queue, which is my client, and then I help 2 other queues. So when I was getting through my stuff, I said, let me just look at these other queues to see how backed up they are. There was nothing in them. There was nothing new coming in them. And I'm sitting there wondering, oh my God, are our clients, are they, maybe the brokers are working from home, but if the clients are not working, they can't be sending requests and like, hey, can you look at this, or hey, can you do this? So I'm like, that's kind of scary. Yeah. I'll know more tomorrow when I'm able to kind of jump into all 3 queues because I'm caught up. But like I said, I'm fortunate enough that I can work from home. I can be in my, my sweatpants. I don't have to leave the house. And then we go from there. But like I said, I'm reading these other people, and I'm like, you people don't make sense. I have one guy who was mad because Trump called it the Chinese virus.
Yeah.
He goes, that's racist.
That's bullshit.
No, it's not. It's accurate.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? It came from China. What the hell are you going to call it?
Right.
And you said it earlier, the Spanish flu. Someone's like, what is that, racist? Not simple. Then someone else made a great point. He goes, I see Mexico and Canada are closing their borders. Boy, are they not racist? But we are for when they close ours,
right.
In the last few years.
Oh, he pointed it out himself that they called him racist.
Yeah, and then there was another idiot that was saying, and this, I can't think of the guy's name now, but it was one of these talking heads that said his greatest fear about this is xenophobia. His greatest fear of something that could potentially kill millions. Yeah, I don't think it's going to get that bad. But how politically correct, its political correctness gone insane. Are you nuts? Of course it started there. Why is that racist?
Yeah.
Explain that. I don't get it. What a fucking idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the racist thing has been following him around a long time, even though he's like one of the most loved presidents white presidents among black people, you could say. Just because, I mean, the black community is surrounding this guy too. He's got 2 spokesmen that are on Fox News all the time. The Diamond and Silk, they haven't given up on him through all the bullshit that he's dealt with. They're still with him. And then you've got just a tremendous amount of credit that he's gotten for having the lowest black unemployment in the history of this country, even though they've criticized him for, exaggerating that number before, but I don't know if that's even accurate. Because I've heard other people, legit, unbiased people talk about it. But anyway, the biggest thing is when he came out and talked about the virus and everything like that, and then talked about the stimulus package and how much money that he could possibly come out there and offer to Americans. And then they just immediately, when the stock market started to crash and everything, even with him talking about all the plans, they couldn't just say the stock market crashed such and such amount of points. CNN had to be like, no, the stock market just erased all the gains that it had under Trump's presidency. They had to do the breaking news thing and put it in those terms.
Yeah. One of the things I said last week when we were on the air, and then it was funny because I made the statement, and then my friend posted something that we had the largest drop in like 11 years that dropped us back into a bear market from a bull market. And I had said that right on the air before that happened. I said, as my friends used to say to me, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. And right after he posted that, I said, Rich, what did I just say on the air? And my friend posted it, and I said, what about bears, Rich? And he goes, or what about bears, John? And he goes, bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. And I'm like, see, Rich, see what I just said? But as I probably said last week, I was getting my bonus on Wednesday, I was getting my paycheck on Friday, and that means I was getting dual deposit into my 401k. My amount plus my company's match. So I was putting in like almost $800 in my stock.
Ooh.
So basically, I was bumped extremely low.
Yeah.
So, for like my parents' age, this is scary because right now, a lot of money's going down. But as I try to explain to people, like they were saying, oh God, like my mom's sister has a friend, and she's worth millions, right? Millions. She was bitching today that she's not going to get the $1,000 stimulus. Lady, you fucking worth millions.
Yeah.
Then she was like, she looked at $1 million in her stocks, and I'm like, he is such a pompous piece of shit, you know? Because first of all, no, you didn't. But you still have, say, 10,000.
Well, I mean,
shares.
the older you are, though,
Worth as much.
it's not only the threat from the virus now. The older you are, the least chance you have of recovering by the time you retire. So if you're planning on cashing out before you retire, that's the problem with people that are millionaires right now and losing a lot of money on their stocks.
No, and I appreciate that. And
so they don't think they're going to be able to carry that lifestyle on for 20 years after they retire.
Yeah.
So that's why they look
she's
at it.
already retired and she's got a lot of money, you know, so it's right now she can live off what she has and wait for this to rebound.
Yeah.
I
think it will rebound rather quickly too, but the thing that worries me is, you know, the debt ceiling and all that. It's always been an issue with us, our national debt. We're always having our most contentious times in Congress and as a government around the time that we have to do these debt ceiling deals. And we've had the sequester already. And, you know, TARP was already bad enough. You know, only really GM came back around and really paid off for us because right now we do all our government business with GM. They provide the fucking presidential limousine and all that bullshit. So it kind of became like a government company. It is a government company, really. But I don't even think they've really paid us back 100%. But anyway, for that to work, for us to be bailing out all these companies, we'd have to be getting paid back interest as a government, and depend on them to do really well with that help. It's kind of like Shark Tank, you know. Are we just going to give all this money away blindly to all of these people in all of these industries, or are we're going to be able to like root through these people and figure out who has the best plan to turn things around? Because there's no sense in just what they say, like putting good money after bad. It's going to be complicated. But the thing that's going to suffer most, I think, is healthcare, because this is extracting all the attention away from routine healthcare stuff, and people are going to start dying of routine healthcare issues that they're not getting taken care of because people are just being told to do telemedicine. And that's another technology that's going to take off. People are going to be doing doctor's appointments from home, and that could be a bad thing. Because shit is already misdiagnosed when doctors don't talk to you in their own office. So if they can't communicate you well enough in person to get your proper diagnosis, how the hell are you going to depend on them to communicate with you over the internet and get it right without the testing available?
Well, that means we got to take charge and really do our home workouts.
Yeah, not only home workouts, but it would be wise to get yourself educated on home remedies as well at this point. Just in case there's no doctor available. I mean, seriously. First do no harm, obviously, is the creed for doctors, but it should be for anything you try at home, too. Don't be trying anything for the first time that has a million side effects, you know. You can go nuts with the all-natural stuff, but you can also toxify yourself with some all-natural stuff, so watch out.
Talking about telemedicine, that's one of the things that my company is really pushing out right now.
Yeah.
You know, with the no copays and with the, you know, trying to, one, make sure people are getting, you know, at least medical professional advice, but at the same time, you know, making sure that, you know, they're not maybe coming in an area where they could possibly infect other people.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like the social distancing thing is that's one of the first conspiracy theories I heard before the 5G. Was that this is all designed to make us an online, distant people, so that as a culture we are so separated from one another that everything exists on a digital platform and plane. Kind of like the Matrix shit when you think deeply about this one. And if you think about why that would make sense to, governments that want to take power or people that want to be in charge of everything, is, who's going to gather in groups and protest if you're supposed to be staying inside and away from everybody? And then,
very true.
If you look at why China would do that, well, look at Hong Kong. There was all of these protests going on in Hong Kong before this. Now everybody's staying the fucking side. You don't even, writing up new banners or anything because they don't even know when they can go out. So over in China too, during the heat of this crisis, these people over there were required on their computers to log in and record their temperature and send it to the government. And if they didn't, they would get a knock on their door.
Wow.
So that's how their operation runs over there.
Then again, though, couldn't you see that maybe it was heading this direction anyways, with everything going on online? Nobody goes to malls. They just order food online. You get clothing on.
But I hate to
online.
give in to the one that I keep harping on. I don't even know if I have enough evidence to even say it's remotely possible. But the 5G one, who is the generation that has been using their phones the longest, the most powerful, advanced phones the longest? The young kids, right? Who is supposedly, having the least problems with this virus? The young kids. It just keeps coming back to that. I hate to say it. But 5G is definitely doing some damage, whether it's related to this virus or not. And I know a lot of these older folks don't have those advanced phones and really aren't that caught up to technology, but they're getting there. They're getting forced to. My aunt, who is probably the oldest one I know on Facebook, just got a page and has been using it religiously. She keeps trying to Facebook call me. And I don't even use Facebook calling, so I just kind of think it's a mistake, like you hit the wrong button or whatever, and I haven't actually used it on there. But one time I did, and I got nothing on her side, but was showing the ceiling on my side. So I'm not even really good with the new phones, but as they're getting more advanced, they're harder to put down. And the more you're using it, the more you're paying for your services, the more these companies are making monthly money. So whether they're paying $50 billion up front to get this set up or $100 billion, they're going to make it back. Because there's one thing that you'll keep paying for no matter what, is your phone. And actually, it could help me out. Because I never signed up for this thing, but I just got my new phone from my girlfriend, because my old one's cracked to shit. And it's a little bit of a newer one. It's a Samsung. And I have this company called 6YA. And it's started off as Fixya, Fixya.com. And I responded to a couple messages on there where somebody was trying to get advice on how to repair chainsaws. So I posted a couple fix-it solutions. And I got a lot of people reading them, like hundreds of people reading them. So when they came out with this service that allows you to basically like Skype people through your phone and, over 5 minutes tell them how to repair something on their own and, what to look at as far as what to troubleshoot and how to do it. And it even allows you to say, okay, I'm going to hang up with you and call you back in 5 minutes, so you can research it and then call them back, because they might be out in the middle of nowhere and all they have is their cell phone. So you're going to conference with them and help solve their problem, basically, and they pay you. So I could do that as work from home stuff if my tree work slows down significantly. So there's good stuff about it that's going to make us more independent and more able to do different things. And, we'll adapt if we know how to use technology well. But at the same time, these devices were already distancing us from each other, whether we could be near each other or not. So this social distancing campaign is going to make it worse for personalities and, social anxiety disorder and all that shit. That's what I worry about as a culture, There was somebody that put out there on Facebook, what if the world just takes a giant break and everybody just gets peaceful? And welcoming and loving, and I'm just like, are you kidding me?
Right.
That's like that's just
What, they're
delusional.
comedians?
Yeah, that's not happening. It's probably going to be more like the worst case scenario if it goes too long. I mean, this is going to be like a whole entire country with cabin fever, basically.
Yeah.
And they're gonna get consumed by the digital world. I already see it happening. Like, you know, it's out of control. But getting back to some normal stuff, we got to cover the news of mixed martial arts. So it's still a mixed martial arts show. The UFC, we kind of began talking about them, but we didn't finish. They're canceling their next, or at least postponing their next 3 events, but they're still planning on somehow pulling off the Ferguson versus Khabib fight on April 18th. Dana White's promised that will still happen. And we don't know where. We don't know if there's going to be a crowd involved or if it's just going to be streamed. But they're trying to defy the odds here and make it happen. But like I said earlier, it's one of those sectors of the economy that's going to take a big hit. Sports in general, sports leagues, and most of these NFL owners are business owners and Hollywood stars and celebrities, and they're all grouped together. So the chances of them losing money over a canceled season that is going to be the kind of money that cripples them, the owners themselves, is probably limited. But you got to consider all the people that are associated with the sports industry that are going to lose their connections, they're going to lose their accounts. In some cases, they're going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars because they're not doing their normal routine. And one of the ones that, I mean, obviously I don't want to see any of the people that work hard for these guys hurt, but one of the ones that I can kind of smile about in some ways is Station Casinos out there in Vegas. Because, you know, I've been criticizing these guys for years about how they've been playing games with the financial system and the bankruptcy courts. And recently I talked about how they were getting a little bit desperate before this happened with trying to sell land and trying to obviously, like, you know, deal with the situation with the corona. They've had to shut down all their casinos completely. So, and ironically, they might have been covered by that problem if they stayed in the online casino business, but they had to get out of that business because they couldn't make a profit on it. So now they probably wish they still had an interest in that, but yeah, they were having some issues with the culinary union because of the elections and the Democrats being against all their little moves to deny the collective bargaining. But yeah, through April 30th, they're going to be shut down. But they do say, despite the closure, they're going to offer regular pay and health benefits to all their hourly and salaried full-time team members. And even the one in California that they manage is going to close until April Fool's Day or until further notice. But they've got 20 properties throughout southern Nevada. And they call it Station Casinos on paper, but it's just really Red Rock Resorts now, if you're talking about the publicly traded stock. And it's probably taking a big hit like all the Vegas stocks are. But the UFC is still trying to tough it out, and they're also trying to be publicly traded. That was one of those moves that they pulled back on long before all this happened. But they just did make Endeavor a publicly traded company. They wanted to make the whole thing a publicly traded company, and they haven't paid dividends to their own people, but they paid dividends to UFC owners. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch too, as Hollywood will probably be affected as much as every other industry due to the movie theaters being kind of discouraged. Nobody wants to go to the movies anymore. So it's going to be a big one as far as entertainment. Period. The whole entertainment sector, the whole hotel sector, the whole casino, Vegas fight picture is just crazy. I mean, this is how bad it is. There's a whole town being overrun by monkeys in fucking Thailand because there's no tourists for them to steal food from. And the entire village has left because of coronavirus. So these monkeys, these monkey gangs have taken over the entire town. I didn't get to see the video, but apparently there was like one monkey that found a banana. And like 300 monkeys jumped him.
Oh, what a nightmare. What a nightmare that was. That was a cool video.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Oliveira got a big win over Kevin Lee, who actually I think had weight issues too going into this. Go figure.
Yes. Yes. And you know, that's 3 out of the last 4 fights he's lost, all by submission.
Right.
And I haven't had
guillotine choke
time to see his post-fight comments, but I'm sure I don't. Did you hear what he said about changing some things?
No.
Or did he say anything?
I didn't actually watch it. I just read about it. But supposedly there was no lack of intensity without the audience, but it definitely kind of took on the feel of glorified sparring. There's no cheering when they had their hands raised or anything like that.
Yeah, but it was it was kind of like going back to the Ultimate Fighter show. But Oliveira just came out and took it to him in the first round. Second round was close. A lot of the just had Lee getting it. He came back in the second toward the end of it, but he just got caught. I mean, he gets over aggressive and just gets caught. So good win for Oliveira. He's just 1 or 2 fights away for that division stack.
And then we had a pretty interesting co-main event too. Demian Maia got knocked the fuck out. I'm gonna have to watch these since I have so much time on my hands. Gilbert Burns. Yeah, I bet he got the bonus for this one. I didn't look up on to see if people who got bonuses, but TKO 2 minutes and 34 seconds from punches. Demian Maia.
Just a good, basic, decent punch combination.
And then Renato Carneiro over Damir Hadzovic by rear naked choke, 44 seconds in. Nikita Krylov over Johnny Walker, another big upset. Johnny was supposed to be better.
That hype train derailed, Tom? That hype train came off the tracks.
Yeah.
Wow, hated to see that. Walker seemed so colorful.
Unanimous decision loss for him.
Seemed like he could give John Jones a go at it, but 2 in a row.
And then Francisco Trinaldo beating John McDessie by unanimous decision. McLovin Moreno, Brandon Moreno over Jussier Formiga by UD. Amanda Ribas over Randa Marcos by unanimous decision. And Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos over Alexei Konchenko by unanimous decision. And we had a draw, very rare majority draw. Enrique Barzola and Ronnie Yaya. Third fight of the night, Marina Moroz versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Moroz wins by unanimous decision. Jeez, almost every fight was a unanimous decision. First 2 fights also ended that way. David Dvorak over Bruno Silva. And first fight was Bea Malecki over Veronica Macedo. And we had actually 14 fighters cut from the UFC as well. To add insult to injury to the corona situation for these people. Thankfully, most of them have gyms and training backgrounds, so possibly they can go do personal training as long as they can keep themselves virus-free, I guess, and go to people's houses and or teletrain. There you go, telemedicine and teletraining. I posted one this week.
I've seen people actually. A friend of mine, she's a aerobics instructor. She's doing online classes on live feeds right now. Because I see her like, hey, whoever wants to sign up, we have so many registrations. Why do you need registrations now? It's online. It's not like you're running out of room.
Right.
But yeah, I know.
But some software platforms will only allow so many people on your bandwidth or whatever for it to work.
And then she's doing like Facebook Live and interactive videos where she is training people online.
That's crazy. It's a new industry. Thanks to 5G. Anyway, 14 fighters no longer with the UFC. We have Marbek Taisumov, Tanya Evinger, Dong Hyun Ma, Chance Recounter, Matthew Lopez, Cyril Asker, Khalid Murtazaliev, Talita Bernardo, Jody Esquibel, Kyle Prepelec, Marcos Mariano, Isabella de Padua, and Zen Hong Lu. It sounds like they picked the most difficult names to pronounce. No. They just said, we're separating ourselves from these people. They just asked Bruce Buffer, who should we cut? But yeah, it's unfortunate. They got to do this at this time. But anyway, they'll find other homes, I'm sure. It's just, will they find other action for fights? I don't know. We also had a limited amount of boxing last week. I did see that Showbox had an event. Yeah, there was actually something on Showbox Friday night. Let me just look it up here on BoxRec. But while we're waiting for that to load up, we definitely have to recognize the biggest boxing story of the week, Roger Mayweather dying. We don't know if it was COVID related, of course, but you know, I do know that he had issues with his lungs. If you watched any of the behind the scenes stuff, what do they call access stuff from Floyd's last few fights, there were certain times he couldn't train with Roger because he was in the hospital with lung issues. I think it's because he smoked cigarettes.
You know, and Rich, I really didn't know that because that he was having such serious health issues the last years. Because you figure Floyd's been so inactive, really, for the last, what would you say, 4 or 5 years, for the most part. He maybe fight once or twice a year. Then he retired, and then he would come back sporadically. You know, he had the fight in 2015 with Pacquiao. He retired, and he fought Berto that September. He retired after that, and he's fought one, professional boxing match since. That was the Conor McGregor fight. That's 2.5 years ago, and then he had that farce over in Japan or wherever it was. So now you look at it, because when he was fighting so regularly, even if it was twice a year, you were having these all-access 24/7 shows. Yeah. And a lot of them focused on his family and the friction between the elder Mayweathers, Roger and Floyd Sr. And, you would see, and they would really be trashing each other. I remember the one time was after they were doing the one where Roger was getting reinstated after the suspension with the Zab Judah debacle, and they were showing a lot of his reinstatement process, and he was coming out saying laughing and everything. So it was he saw so much focus on the family, and really, since Floyd retired, I can't even really tell you who else Floyd Sr. has been training.
Yeah.
The only one I really hear that much anymore is Jeff Mayweather, the youngest and maybe most sane of the group. A few of the people that he's been working. Hey, I'm not lying.
Yeah,
a few of the people that he's been working with.
He was very quiet when I saw him at the gym.
Yeah, he's quiet. But you're right. So a lot of, I guess, Roger's ailments were falling under the radar because Floyd wasn't in the spotlight as much.
Right. I'm actually friends with Jeff Mayweather on Facebook. And I was flattered one year when he actually wished me a happy birthday. I was like, whoa, Jeff Mayweather knows when my birthday is. Yeah, that was cool. But Roger has been just living, breathing boxing as far as, with riding Floyd and working with Floyd. And actually I did a couple videos when I was able to go to the open workout for the Ortiz fight, which was in September of 2011. So I was stuck out in Vegas from 2009 through 2011, I want to say, or maybe even 2008. but it was like 2 or 3 years that I was stuck out there. So I went to a couple of the training camps for Floyd. And actually, that was one of the times that I met Al Bernstein, too, and got him on the show later on, because I met him there. But before that, when we were at the Mayweather workout, I met a few interesting people. I did a nice video that got a lot of attention a few years ago of Rafael Garcia, who was the cut man and the hand rapper for Mayweather. And he was doing a little jig to the music while Floyd was doing his sit-ups. And a lot of people, after he just died like 4 years ago, after he died, posted comments on a YouTube video, because, that was like one of the most recent videos of him. So that was kind of cool that I got to, put something out there about him during one of his, happiest times. It was all smiles. But that's just one of those things that people don't realize when, they talk about Mayweather and his greatness and all that. It was a lot to do with his team. Obviously the athlete himself has a lot to do with it in a sport like boxing, but his team just gelled, and they all knew that they were there to do what he wanted, but they also could encourage him to push every now and then. And he didn't even have to do any communication at all, really, with Roger when he did the mitts. And that's just how like when you watch that in action and you see those two work together like that, you just know this is a fighting family. Kind of like how Tommy Morrison must have grown up with his two brothers fighting and his father being a boxer. And, it was just always, everything was fighting around them. So in a way that was the way they communicated. It was through fighting.
How about the Hiltons? You remember the Hiltons?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was another. Yeah, they had about 5 of them, I think.
So
I always
that was his.
I was never a big fan of the Mayweather style of myth, because I thought it was not realistic to actual boxing.
Oh, it was the show.
It was a lot of
they knew it was the show.
Timing, and I know a lot of people that say the same thing. And because you're doing a lot. It's a lot of like pop, 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 but it's like not realistic. And I know some very well respected trainers that are not fans of it. The one thing that used to bother me, because both of the senior Mayweather trainers, Roger and Floyd Sr., used to really be into that type of mitt work. And I remember Floyd Sr., when he was working with Oscar De La Hoya, had De La Hoya doing it. That was around, I guess, like 04, 05 maybe. But then I remember him also working with a guy like Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton was a mauler type of fighter. And, he was having him do this, rat-a-tat work, which I'm like, that's not Ricky Hatton. But I could see him, training guys like Mike Tyson and Joe Frazier the same way, because he would not adapt to the fighter; he would make the fighter adapt to him. I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those things with Roger when I met him in person. I just kind of shook his hand and said, "Hello, nice to meet you." I didn't really get into any questions, but then, I kind of got to know him a little better just sitting next to him as we were waiting for Floyd to get through all the media crush to start doing the mitts. Roger was literally like sitting at the corner steps, like with his elbows on the top step, just all laid out, because he was a tall dude. Even in his old age, he didn't get all crumpled down or anything. He was a very tall guy. So he was just laying back, relaxing, literally waiting, and 4 or 5 reporters from other outlets came up with recorders and everything in their hands and started asking questions, and he was talking about his own career and Floyd, and he was a little bit harder to understand too, because in his advanced age, and not so much from pugilistic dementia, I think, but just from the hard knocks of life. he had a little bit of a slur, but it wasn't like you really had to struggle to understand what he was saying. You just had to be listening, and there couldn't be a lot of background noise. And he was just so gracious. He never turned anybody away or said, I'm not here for that or anything. He just went through everybody's questions and appreciated everybody and was all smiles. And it was like one of those things, like when Freddie Roach once said, when he gets into the ring with any boxer and starts doing the mitts, his Parkinson's goes away, you know. So whatever issues Roger had with his lungs or his health, when he went into that boxing gym, it changed for him. He was suddenly, you know, needed and on call, so he rose to the occasion. And I know he did a lot of that when he wasn't feeling the best, I'm sure. So we hope that you know, his crossover went well, and he's up there enjoying whatever is on the other side, and hopefully there's still boxing going on. Maybe he'll luck out. On the other side, there'll be more boxing than there is here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely one of those guys who was a realist.
Oh yeah.
The other classic line he had was when he turned to the camera during one fight. He was one of your boy Gotti, and he said, "I told you guys he was going to knock his ass out on HBO." Yeah, it's a tough one. Anyway, we had Friday the 13th fights, as I mentioned. The big ones on here, Adrian Curiel over Rosendo Hugo Guarneros. Never heard of him. And this, it's got to be more than that. I don't know why they're not showing them. I swear there was some other names I remember from Friday. And a big fight this weekend. They are having some fights. Friday the 20th, Alicia Baumgardner versus Jessica Gonzalez, and Saturday you got Yameleth Mercado against Catherine Fury, Phiri, and then we got Thibaut Monabisa against Toto Landero. Must be in some foreign countries that aren't having COVID issues. But yeah, Friday the 13th. I thought we had more fights than this. Anyway, we'll check that out further in a minute. Speaking of coronavirus news, not like we haven't talked about it enough, but Ronda Rousey made a little bit of a stink on it, even though she's not involved in wrestling or MMA or any combat sport anymore. Her and her new hubby, Travis Brown, are out there doing the self-sustaining thing now. She basically made a video about basically knocking all these people going to grocery and department stores and just totally unloading every shelf of all the stuff. Except, funny enough, in New England, nobody wanted Manhattan clam chowder.
Yeah.
That was left on the shelf. But they call it Browsy Acres wherever they are out there. And she just showed off all the stuff she had and from her herb garden and her chickens and ducks and she's got a whole steer cut up in the freezer and solar. And she's basically just bragging about her prepping, and she comes across as kind of a spoiled little brat. Because obviously, you can't really do all that without a little bit of money to start with. Very few homeless people start living off the grid and get government paychecks and everything, Or not government paychecks, but, paychecks from the grid car company. But that's what I'm going to do with my $1,000, I think. I'm going to get myself some solar panels and hook them up to the mainframe and see if I can't make some money off the utility companies. We've looked into some of the easier to set up technology. But yeah, some people really took this the wrong way. They basically felt like it was a bitch slap to all of us who don't have that choice to just go off and do nothing and sustain ourselves in the middle of the wilderness and do the on Walden Pond thing. No, what is it? Walden Woods. Different movie. And it's in the news as well. Conor McGregor's aunt died from the coronavirus, apparently. He had to actually stop an interview he was about to do because he found out right at that moment. So it's not just a couple actors here and there and some NBA stars that have been hit by this. It's probably some relatives of some fighters too. And like I said, I don't know if Roger had any complications related to corona, but Vegas is shut right down. Another former guest of ours, Bill Smallwood, was supposed to have a fight this Friday out there, and now that's off. And that was going to be his last fight, I believe. He was, win or lose, that was supposed to be it. So that's interesting.
As of right now, it looks likely that the Canelo-Billy Joe Saunders fight is going to be postponed.
Right.
All the MGM properties are, at least temporarily shut down. And that's where I would stay at the Luxor again. So.
Right.
So now that's why the Canelo fight would only be a month away. So.
Right. All right, here's the one I think that I was talking about. Brandon Lee. Another Lee fighting over the weekend. That was on Friday from Hinckley, Minnesota. This is the one that they had no audience for. 18-0 against Camilo Prieto, 15-2, and Brandon Lee won. I guess I did not want to have logged in because it doesn't say the method of win. But then we had welterweights. Brian Norman Jr. He also stayed undefeated at 16-0 against Flavio Rodriguez, lost to 9-2-1. And then we had Alejandro Guerrero at lightweight. He also stayed undefeated while Jose Angulo took his second loss, 12-2. And then featherweights, Aram Avagan, 9-0-1 against Dagoberto Aguero, 15-0. And Aguero got the first loss of his career, so he's 15-1 now. So it's an interesting one. And then Cruz Stewart win over Martez McGregor. 8-4 is McGregor's record. 7-0 goes Cruz. Goes up to. That's what he goes up to. And that's it for boxing last week.
Yeah.
And Premier Boxing Champions has canceled everything until I think April.
Yeah.
At least. And then we were going to kind of discuss a little bit about my follow-up work on the Trisha Morrison interview, but now we don't really have a lot of time for that if we want to end by 10. But just to kind of follow up on that, I'm going to be writing a real detailed article on this, but it kind of ties into what's going on now with the coronavirus. Because we really don't know what to believe. Is this thing just a flu that we're going to get over and develop immunity to? Or is it really the panic thing that they say it is? But the same hype was going around about HIV. People thought you could get it from a toilet seat. It was just... Yeah, there's just total panic, a lot of misinformation, a lot of misunderstanding of what it was. And now, if you weren't really disturbed by all of that, we're starting to kind of uncover stuff through this Tommy Morrison story that seems to indicate that Tommy might have been onto something when he suggested that HIV might not even exist. And I thought when I first heard it, what a kook. How could you say that? That's like a really big, deep conspiracy theory. But since then, I've been doing a lot of research, and if it did exist, I can open myself up to all avenues of this conspiracy. I can say, well, if it did exist, what's the explanation for this? Okay, the only explanation I can come up with for Tommy's situation, if it did exist, is at some point he took the drugs that cured it, that, are curing everybody, supposedly. And why it's disappeared off the radar for the last 10 years and only suddenly come back. It's kind of a mystery, but either he took something and cured it, or he took nothing and cured it just because he was an athlete. And athletes have different bodies than the rest of us, right? I mean, that's just a fact. People that don't work out, don't have a good physical regimen, that are not athletic, they don't have bodies that can handle illness well, can handle sickness well. And what kind of supports that part of the possible theory is if you Google it, Nevada HIV, Nevada State Athletic Commission and HIV, and boxing, you'll find that there's very few boxers that are going to come up in the top 10. Tommy Morrison is obviously going to come up there. But before Tommy Morrison, there was like 3 or 4 boxers that tested positive. And one of them, another former guest of ours, gave him his first and only loss. A guy named Lamar Parks, Reggie Sweet Johnson.
I remember Lamar Parks. Lamar Kid Fire Parks.
Yeah, Reggie gave him his first loss. And this is a guy that had more bad-mouthing about his love life and situations that led up to his positive test than Tommy Morrison did. I mean, there was legitimate arguments that he tried to use someone else's blood, that he tried to get somebody else to go take the test, and that his wife died of AIDS. But then he came out and said, well, what about my wife's ex-husband? He had AIDS. And he had never gotten sick as far as it looks. He never got sick. And it was like they had him dead to rights on it. And then the other part of the theory of what it does to you, just to have the diagnosis, never mind all the illnesses associated with it. And especially being a boxer where all you know is fighting. And what are you going to do? Well, 3 out of the supposedly 5 to 10 people that Mark Ratner said came back positive for HIV tests in Nevada ended up in the drug trade. And we don't necessarily know Tommy was in the drug trade, but he was caught with guns and drugs, so you kind of have to make that leap. What got him incarcerated was, hanging around with the wrong crowd, obviously. So you can kind of make the leap that he probably, at least dabbled in the business. But anyway, that's not to me a coincidence that these guys ended up in these positions. It's because they were outcast, so they ended up with the outcasts. And there was one lady that I believe should be sued for defamation from ESPN, who went out there and said all kinds of crap that just contradicts it. All her different statements in this interview just contradicted each other. Because in one breath she's saying, yep, there was evidence that showed the autopsy that he died from an infection and there was no trace of AIDS or HIV in his system. But then she talks about how the mother said that he had AIDS, so he must have died of AIDS, and, it's a mystery. But it was just like, she came out and said that he could have done something else. That's the shame. Why did he end up doing drugs and destroying himself and his career and being a tragic tale? He could have been an announcer. It was bullshit. Nobody wanted anything to do with him. They felt like he disgraced the sport and himself. But the thing is, all right, if he was ever HIV positive, why hasn't there been one single sparring partner before all this, or one girlfriend, or one wife who came out and said, Tommy Morrison gave me HIV? Right? Not one. Not one National Enquirer headline. Nothing. So that's a mystery that nobody's giving any credit. But yeah, there was a couple other guys. Lamar Parks was one of those guys that supposedly ended up in the drug trade. But he also was quoted in an article saying that his doctor told him that he didn't need to come back anymore. That he needed to go home and come back when he has symptoms, when he's sick, because the doctor obviously couldn't find anything wrong with him. So interesting. And you know, if these guys are strung out on drugs and HIV positive, you'd think they'd have a greater chance of getting AIDS if it was real, right? Because they're obviously not really being athletes anymore. And Tommy Morrison was actually a heavy smoker, too, before his comeback. So that adds a whole other element to it. How could he have, smoking cigarettes? So how could he have been able to pull off this comeback if he really did have HIV? So the big questions in my mind on this that I've still yet to really fully examine is, do I commit to there was never HIV in the first place in anybody? Or do I just go with what Tricia said, there's just no HIV in Tommy? That story we can definitely pin down, but the bigger story is whether HIV really existed in the first place, because that would be the ultimate screw job of all mankind.
Man, if you were able to uncover that, you can retire now because you're so freaking rich it wouldn't even be funny.
Yeah.
Or you might have a hitman after you.
Right. Yeah, that's the other part of it. And Tricia did confess to me when we talked outside the show that, the answer that she gave on the show about, Tommy being a denialist and whether she, agreed with that philosophy. She changed the subject mighty quickly, and I was very impressed with that after the fact, because I was like, well, she knows she's in lawyer mode. She knows what's valuable to her case and what needs to get out there that's going to contribute to her case and what a judge is going to listen to. Because if you really get into that, it's a very big rabbit hole, and we could have gone a whole show just on that topic. But I'll send you guys some stuff that she sent me that will just blow your eyes open. It's just big time. But anyway, with respect to Tommy Morrison, the biggest evidence that even Reggie said to me, Reggie Johnson, when I talked to him about it, because I kind of kicked around. He's the one that told me about Lamar Parks, that he tested positive for HIV and made me look into Lamar. But Reggie was talking about he had always heard that Tommy's mother consistently said he had HIV and that he was worried about getting caught having fought with it. So that to me says maybe he was worried about it because he was promiscuous, and maybe he heard all these rumors about how you could catch it. So whatever he got, a flu or whatever, some little sickness, he probably thought, I got it. And maybe he said it to enough people, it became a convenient scapegoat for them to use against him, if you believe the conspiracy of Don King doing it all, or his manager and those people, rigging the test. But if you believe the whole thing that they just kind of selectively let people test positive falsely and started hooking people up with the drug to make these companies money, or whatever theory you're going to go with as to why they would fake HIV, then you could just go with the mother's just listening to the media, or maybe she heard it wrong, or maybe she had him at a weak moment when he was discouraged, and he just really believed it after the fact that he had it, and it took him a couple years or a couple months after the fact to realize that, after the initial tests that made it public, for him to realize, well, Jesus, I don't have any problem. This is imaginary. Like it had to have taken him a considerable amount of time to come to grips with, all right, they're telling me I have a disease, but I might not. So that to me is the most intriguing part of it, because where do you go from there? Like, he definitely made a legitimate comeback, and if you watch all the comeback shows and everything like that, he did the tests right in front of the cameras. They took blood right from his arm, so he didn't use anybody else to fool anybody, and his autopsy came out negative for HIV. So Magic Johnson also says that there's no trace of it left in his system. So you have two scenarios that you have to break down. Does it exist? And if it exists, can you get rid of it? And if you can get rid of it, how did Tommy get rid of it? That's the question I want to answer. Did he get rid of it just because he's an athlete? Or did he get rid of it because he took the right drugs? Because apparently he did, at one point when he was imprisoned, have to take the drugs. But Trisha completely thinks that he just palmed them or cheeked them. And, he only took a couple of them and found that they were just too bad side effects. So I don't believe any of that. I believe it was if it was a cure situation, it was natural. It was a natural outcome that he was able to cure himself with. And that kind of ties into the 714X stuff that I started taking too. I'm on my 4th day, and I just took my shot before the show, and that is the thing that they should be using to test people, because the other component of that is 714X is based around a microscope this guy created years ago. This guy had a degree in biology from France before he came over to Canada. And in World War II, this guy had figured out how to run his motorcycle on wood. So this is how smart he is. Okay, a guy named Gaston Naessens. And he develops this product called 714X because he came up with a microscope first that could get so far down into your blood and your plasma that he could see the tiniest particles of living energy in your body. And he called them somatids. And he called it the somatidian cycle, where they go through 16 stages. And after the 4th stage of these little spores, you might call them, they start to get negative. And they start to badly affect your body. You start to basically degenerative, either disease or a degenerative condition. So your body is degenerating after the 4th stage, basically, from the tiniest building block up. So this doctor decided, and he's a doctor of biology, not medicine, so he got a lot of criticism for that, but he's still smart. He decided he needs to create something non-toxic that can, what he calls, sustain your protection gate, which is like a proverbial gate between the 4th and the 5th stage. So not only you have to preserve that gate, but you have to find a way to kind of point that cycle backwards. Maybe get back to the 2nd stage if you're lucky. Or the 3rd stage if you're on the 4th stage. So he created this stuff called 714X. And all it is, you could call it snake oil if you didn't believe in it, but all it is something called camphor, which has been used for centuries, generations, thousands of years, to cure almost everything. And it's been put in menthol cigarettes too, to prolong the lives of smokers, according to the research that's been uncovered over the years. So that tells you something. But camphor is in it, and then everything else in it that's in it is trace elements and mineral salts. And it gets injected into your lymph node in your groin area. So it's a little difficult to do by yourself, but it can be done. I'm living proof of that. But basically the hardest thing to do is find the spot that you're supposed to inject it into, because it's a very specific spot. It's like a 2-centimeter circle that you have to pinpoint. So once you get over that, it's just like an insulin needle. You stick it in, and it's 0.5 cc's a day. It's not that hard. But it's a genuine immune system booster. And, honestly, I can say I've taken it 3 times before this. And each time I took it, it was legit 3, 4, sometimes 5 years before I even got a cold after I took it. So it definitely boosts your immune system. And it's not do-all, end-all. You can't just do that and do no exercise. But it does empower you to be able to get up and do more exercise. And You feel more limber, it's because it's got nitrogen inside the camphor. And this doctor's theory was that nitrogen is lacking in your body. That's why it's in the air that you breathe. So you need more in your body fluids as well as your lungs to promote the pumping system of your body. And that's why it makes sense that these athletes who supposedly had HIV or whatever they had, never having a trace of it or never having difficulty with it. Because the concept of this stuff is shit gets stagnant in your lymph. You inject this into your lymph node so that your lymph becomes fluid again. And it's not clogged up. And all your lymph system is a pumping system and a circulation system. So all the toxins that get liquefied in your lymph go into your bloodstream and then get cycled out. So it's interesting philosophy. But really, when they really get into the details, all it is a pump, right? And how can you also pump your body? Exercise. So literally, all you'd have to do is get yourself a giant trampoline and jump on it and lift your arms up and down as you're doing it. And you're operating that pump sort of the same way. And the only way you're not going to get the benefit out of that is if you've got a lot of toxins in there that are clogging that pump. But basically, you use the 714X if you've been sedentary, if you're out of shape, and you need to get back in the game and you're worried about sickness. So you want to prevent stuff, because it's a preventive, too. I didn't take it because I had a cancer or anything, but the main reason why I got turned on to it was because it cured my cousin of cancer. So, I would think that it would be gold for anybody who was really, really worried about this COVID thing. I really think it's revolutionary. And the only reason why they can't really capitalize on it is because it's all natural ingredients. It has no side effects, So you're only making money off that one sale of the drug, or however many times it takes to really cure you, because sometimes it takes 3 to 4 to 5 cycles to cure somebody. But it only costs $400 a batch, needles and everything. So it's not like these other crazy prices for pharmaceuticals. That's a 21-day supply for $400. So ridiculously cheap, highly effective, and non-toxic. Really the only side effects, you might have a little pain around where you put the fucking needle in. And every now and then, if you misjudge the spot, you might miss an injection. I've missed like 3 injections over the 5 times. No, this is the 4th time I've taken it. So, let's see, 63 shots plus 4, 67 shots, and I've missed 3 times. And all you get is a little bit of burning in your bloodstream around where your lymph node is. And supposedly, if you've pierced the lymph node enough times, if that happens and you just keep the ice on, your lymph node will suck in most of the stuff that missed it, if you get it close enough. So it's very unrisky. You're really not going to hit anything vital there. The biggest thing you got to worry about is air bubbles in the needle if you don't know how to use a frickin' needle. And, we're getting into that age where, you're supposed to be trying to minimize your exposure to other people and your visitations to the hospital if it's not something serious, right? So, like the old guy from the People's Court used to say, sometimes you have to take the law into your own hands. He used to discourage it, though, but sometimes you have to take the medicine into your own hands. That's what I've chosen to do, and I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't advise people to do it if I hadn't had so much experience with it. I would never be somebody first time trying something and tell you it's the greatest thing. Each time I've taken it, I've lost a considerable amount of weight. I think most times it's like 20 to 30 pounds. I've already lost 10. I did start my workout routine before I started this stuff, but I've been able to get down to 10 pounds lost consistently. At the end of the day, after my last workout or run or whatever, I'm down 10 pounds from where I started. And I don't feel like it's work either. I don't feel like it's straining my body. I feel like it's getting easier every day. And I think that I know that the 714X helps with that. I even feel last couple days tingling in the area where my shingles was last bothering me. Like it's working on it. Because one of the things that it's apparently supposed to do is help facilitate the repair of damaged tissue. Which really your body will do amazing self-healing on its own if it's given the right conditions, basically. You know, you have to give yourself the best nutrients. You have to rest when something hurts bad enough, and you have to, do physical therapy when something needs it. But really, the human reliance now on medicine and treatment is it's worse than this panic going on right now. It needs to be adjusted. I really think that's the key. Closest to the source has always been my philosophy on that. But yeah. So something like that, I believe, could have cured HIV in somebody. But then again, you have the people who are the experts that Tricia has sued in Nevada, and they're saying that if it came out in Tommy's autopsy that he didn't have HIV when he died, then that means he never had it. So that's the experts saying that. So I mean, it's like the conspiracy theories on Corona. It's an endless loop. You don't know where to go. But I'm still actively questioning all those avenues and wondering, which one do I most believe in? I hate Don King. That's probably the worst part of it. I really hate the guy. I mean, I respect that he has an impact and a history in boxing, but I hate his guts. I know too much about the bad shit he's done, and that's really clouded my opinion on the situation. Because I'll convict him left and right if I have to, if the evidence leads to him, but I really don't have enough evidence right now to even indict him for it. Though he can indict a ham sandwich, I just don't know. I don't know if he was that personally invested in Tyson that he would want to destroy Tommy Morrison to make Tyson look better. But the pieces were in place. That's the big thing with Don not being able to be eliminated. The pieces were definitely in place because Tyson was coming out of jail. He was on the comeback trail. Tommy was just one big win fresh off of getting destroyed by Lennox. So he was also rebuilding himself. It kind of seems a little premature for Don King to think, I got to ruin this guy. That's the only out that he has so far in my eyes. It was a little too soon, even though he just signed that contract and everything, and maybe he had cold feet right away, and the whole manager thing could have tied into it too. I kind of almost would rather believe the bigger conspiracy that it was a HIV thing. That was the angle that made this a real injustice. It was just piss poor testing, an honest mistake because the system was corrupted by these tests that they said were accurate but really weren't unless you did a second test. And that ties into the current thing too, because there was a guy that shook Donald Trump's hand at Mar-a-Lago, and they were up in arms. There was a couple of news articles that said that guy that shook his hand tested positive for the coronavirus. And lo and behold, the news articles had to correct themselves and say, well, the second test came out negative. So there are two different tests for this thing, too. And Tommy had even said in his last interview that, okay, the first test would come out negative in a lot of the cases when I went to get tested. But then they would do the second follow-up test, and that would always come back negative. So that's how I knew I didn't have it. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that human technology has not really figured out yet. And they'll think they've got it figured out, but the news travels too fast. The news travels faster than fact sometimes. But anyway, that's my soapbox rant. HIV doesn't exist, possibly. But I'm more inclined to believe the middle ground, which is it did exist, possibly. They might have created it. Yeah, that might be the knock on them. But it was a real thing. It did really affect people, and certain people figured out the secret of how to cure it. And they would, rather than tell you that they had the secret ingredients to cure it, they just wanted to put it out there for everybody else that ever had the same situation, that it never existed. That was more of a more powerful thing for them, maybe to champion. Maybe that was their excuse for doing it, if it's not true. I think there's a ton of evidence that it could be. So that's what happens when you give me too much time to think about shit. So it is. I guess until next week, then. Unless you guys
All right.
got anything else you
All
want?
right, guys. Can't say enjoy the fights, but
Yeah, you can't say that this week, Tom.
Enjoy the reruns tonight. Yeah, fucking reruns. You know what we ought to do? We ought to come up with some. We'll each give each other like a fight to watch or something. You know, some old school maybe the other guys haven't seen. Maybe we'll think of that.
Well,
YouTube is a good friend, right?
I heard what Sports
Yes,
Center
sir.
and the sports channels on TV are going to start doing is having just conversation shows about like the greatest athletes of all time, and just having debates about certain things. So, you know, maybe we can just go back to different stories. Like, you know, we got tons of Rocky stuff too. We can always just do like a quick hit show on the you know, the news as far as, you know, when this thing is going to end, and then cut to an old interview, or we can do new interviews too with people. We can use the time off to just really get into one-on-one talks with people again. There's a lot of ways we can go with this, so it's definitely not going to end us. Physically or mentally, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, social distancing. It's gonna take some getting used to. But
Yeah,
everybody,
really. Especially people that are social.
yeah. I posted on somebody's link earlier. You know, I guess we kind of really need all those old Catholic nuns that used to go to the school dances and carry around the rulers. Except now they need to have 2 yardsticks. Separate all the dancers. You know, you gotta be 12 inches apart. Unreal. Alright, well, we won't run out of things to talk about. And I'll probably have something together. I'm probably going to have to do like a 3-part series if I'm really going to go full on against the AIDS thing. So I'm thinking my first thing is going to be out by next Saturday. Or this coming Saturday. We'll shoot for Saturday. And then we'll do it maybe once a week while we're waiting this whole thing out. So, till the next conspiracy.
Yeah, right.
I'll talk to you later.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.
all right, guys. Wash your hands.
Yeah, wash your hands. Stay inside. Don't touch your face. Adios.